What a lot of people don't actually understand about enmeshment is that it is essentially the loss or lack of identity, right? You are so glued into a system, a structure, you're so sucked into that system or structure that you don't fully know who you are. A great example is that I was just having a conversation with some people, no names, but I was talking about how the Mariana Trench, I believe it's called, right? One of like the deepest parts or the deepest part of the known ocean, right? Because apparently there is still unknown, uncharted territory of the ocean. I'm gonna love this metaphor. Using this for this is perfect. Um, right? Like it's deep and it goes down really far, right? Um, Enmeshment takes a person and I'm going to use the word distract, right? Enmeshment takes a person and it distracts them from themselves and quite honestly their authentic and true nature. Enmeshment is very much a survival based dynamic, right? Before I proceed and continue, somebody asked me for a part two of the first video, so this is that part two. um, And the reason why I love utilizing the metaphor of uncharted territory of ocean is because any given individual is essentially like that, right? It's a perfect metaphor because any individual is like an uncharted ocean. Any individual I said that is twice because I was never mind. Anyway, any individual that is glued into a system of enmeshment is like an uncharted ocean, right? Imagine that we've never explored the Mariana Trench, right? Which is deep as hell. It's got some of the craziest shit down there. There are probably ocean creatures that we are still unaware of or even learning about, right? An individual that is sucked into a dynamic of enmeshment is very much like the uncharted territories of the ocean because it's unknown and it doesn't really know itself. It's just glued into this system of enmeshment for survival based reasons, simply because that's what it's comfortable and familiar with, right? But if that individual was to unsuck itself, I know that sounds kind of funny, but if this individual was to unsuck itself from that system, it would be presented with all of this like unknown territory upon itself, right? A lot of that is uncharted. There is so much about any given individual outside of survival-based dynamics, specifically in this case, enmeshment. There's so much. Like imagine you are born and raised into a system of enmeshment, and considering that every individual is unique and we all have our own unique characteristics and traits and etchings and stuff, right? Imagine never taking the time to get to know that. Imagine never taking the time. I really don't condone a majority of how we explore this planet because we are fucking savages. We destroy nearly fucking everything that we touch, unfortunately. Um, so I love the idea of expeditioning and exploring and discovering, which is really what the opposite of enmeshment is, right? Enmeshment is really loss of self, lacking of self, conforming to a system simply for the unconscious reasons of survival, validation, and approval, um, being consumed into somebody else's shit, right? Um, but when you think about it, any individual that is sucked into a system of enmeshment is essentially at a loss or a lack of self. Not only that, but they're also to a very large degree an uncharted sea, right? The amount of depth. The reason why I use the metaphor of any sea or ocean for this is because it consists of depth, right? Literally, and for the human metaphorically, right? There is so much depth for any individual. Any individual. It doesn't matter what the system, what the structure. There is so much depth. There's so much, like like you see a deep diver, right? They jump off of a boat and they dive into like black holes, blue holes in the ocean, right? How far down does it go? Where does it go? What is the measurements, this, that, and the other. It is an expedition. Every single individual inwardly is an expedition, right? We think of, for instance, Hugh Glass, right? They made the movie The Revenant about him. Fantastic movie. I'm not going to say anything about it for those who haven't seen it. I highly recommend it, with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy. Um, we are essentially, for those that have not taken the time to get to really know themselves because they're sucked into dynamics of enmeshment, we are essentially territory to expedition, right? To discover, to dive into. And dynamics of codependency, dynamics of enmeshment, they completely fucking void that. It's just a dynamic of a survival based tendency, right? You learned that you had to be consumed into other people's shit to be validated, to be approved of, to be loved, to feel any sort of intimacy. And enmeshment is not intimacy. It's not. At least it's not pseudo. It's not healthy intimacy. It's if anything, it's pseudo intimacy, right? But the whole matter is getting to know yourself. That's what this is all about. That's what the whole dynamic of um, exiting enmeshment and diving into yourself, right? You're gonna get pushback. You're going to get backlash. You're gonna get people saying, "Hey, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. Where do you think you're going? What do you think you're doing? You've always been a part of this system. Stay here. Obey." Um, True to form, this, that, and the other, right? But the reality of the matter is that we are all these deep seas, universes of territory. Some of us know ourselves better than others, right? Because we've taken the time to introspect and to really learn. Um, but others that are deeply glued into systems of enmeshment that have learned um, diffused boundaries, codependency dynamics, and everything, they hardly fucking know themselves, right? That's the reality of it. So, what is I guess the word to use is antidote. I don't know, maybe that's not the right word to use. What is the solution to this? Spending a lot of time by yourself. Imagine when Hugh Glass, the expeditioner, was alone and he was just exploring and discovering. Not only did he learn about the land, which is important for any expeditioner, any explorer, any introspector, he also learned about himself and his own capabilities. He learned about different things about himself throughout that entire process of exploring territory that was maybe even uncharted, right? And that's the thing too, like, let me make this even more clear too. I'm going to go another level here, right? A lot of the land of this entire world is already charted, right? It's not uncharted anymore. It's already charted. It's already been explored, right? That doesn't matter though. We can still discover things that we like about it without worrying that, oh, it's already charted, this, that, and the other. Unlearning the enmeshment dynamics, unlearning the codependency, unlearning the survival based dynamics, being within the self, being grounded in the boundaries of the self, being grounded in yourself, in your own frame of authenticity, is what this is all about. Regrounding with who you are as an individual is the gold here. There's an entire gold mine inside of any individual, right? And for those that have been enmeshed, they're very distracted from their gold mine. They're very distracted from their own authenticity. They're very distracted from their own nature, right? That's the reality of it. They don't know a whole lot about themselves because they haven't taken the time to dive into themselves. Sorry, I was processing a burp. Anyway, um, that's the reality of it, right? Your life changes so much when you stop enmeshing with people. When you exit the system of enmeshment that you came from and you stop continuing to enmesh with people. Because, quite honestly, the people that are comfortable and familiar from a very early age with enmeshment, they might exit a system of enmeshment, but what is that repetition compulsion machine going to have them continue doing? Enmeshing with other people. They're gonna get sucked into that system, that next system, and they're gonna enmesh with them. They're gonna suck into that. They're gonna suck into that because it's comfortable and familiar. So consciously doing the work of like actually ejecting yourself and stepping away from the entire system altogether, that's the winning strategy right there. And then the gold is just being by yourself. Let me just make this very clear. When you actually spend time alone and you sit in your own mind, which I understand is extremely fucking difficult and even terrifying for many people, fuck, you learn so much about yourself. You really do. There is so much uncharted territory in every individual that has been part of a system, glued inside of that system of enmeshment, and with that codependency. So many people don't know who they are because they've been sucked into this glob of a system with other people and its enmeshment. And they've just been doing what these other people want them to do. They've just been codependent. They've just been, diffused boundaries, this, that, and the other. A majority of how they know themselves is based on how the other people see them and what the other people tell them that they are, not based on the work that they've done to be by themselves, to be alone, and to really examine themselves, right? um, Socrates, I believe it was, said the unexamined life is not worth living, right? Anybody who's been sucked into a system of enmeshment, right, this is usually starting from a very early age, they are exceedingly unexamined. They exceedingly don't know themselves. And that's why this is so important to dive into this dynamic and to better understand who you are. Because if you've been sucked into a dynamic forever, right? Many people are even born into this dynamic. If you've been sucked into a dynamic of enmeshment, the chances that you don't know yourself are exceedingly fucking high. The chances that you could be learning about things about yourself that you didn't even know that might even like completely change your life, like transform your life, is wild. Absolutely wild. Um, your life will change in ways that you didn't even previously think of. I'm gonna use this saying that I've heard before because I think it'll be helpful. It's a fun saying. I like it a lot. Um, what we don't know, right? So there's like, for starters, we don't know fucking anything as it is. We created everything. We created words. We created numbers. This, that, and the other. Words don't exist. Numbers don't exist. We studied the universe, the nature of reality, and we've come up with these structures and these theories, and that's that's us, right? Um, we don't know so much, but what we don't know that we don't know is even more, right? What we don't know that we don't know. That is the definition that I want a lot of people to understand about enmeshment. Enmeshment for like any individual is essentially walking around wearing a fucking blindfold. Your pursuits, everything that you do, is based on the system. It's not based on you. You don't even know yourself, right? So what you don't know that you don't know is the thing that is, I want to say, fucking you up. It's essentially distracting you from your own nature. And a lot of people are very comfortable with enmeshment, right? That's called home for them. But and anybody can live enmeshed. You can. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, but what I am here to say is that if you live in a system of enmeshment with people, you're missing out on yourself. Talk about fear of missing out, right? FOMO, that big scary thing that a lot of people try to avoid. The biggest missing out I would argue that there is in life, aside from any event, anything that the media tries to suck you into, missing out on yourself. And that's what happens when you're glued into a system of enmeshment. A loss of self, a lack of self, a loss of identity, a lack of identity. You don't know yourself. You're living based on this system, this structure, what they want for you, what they think you should do. And because you're still caught up in a survival based dynamic, you obey because it's comfortable and familiar. That's the real fear of missing out. Missing out on yourself.